Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be diving into our top 12 fantasy football quarterback tiers for the upcoming 2022 fantasy football season. Obviously, with these tiers lists, there's an element of a rankings feel to today's video, but what we're going to be really focusing on is differentiating the different groups and drop-offs between the quarterback class this season. Obviously, again, this is a top 12 list. I would love to dive into this position group a little bit deeper later on in the offseason, but for now, we're going to be keeping our eyes on the QB1s, the top 12 at the position for today's video. So if you are new around here, feel free to drop down, click that subscribe button, and leave today's video with a like. We've got some good stuff in store for you all. And turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode. But before we dive into today's video, two announcements. As always, check out SFS Weekly, our email service here at the SFS channel. Once per week, we're going to be dropping free exclusive content. And again, all I need is your email address. And I promise I will not spam you guys. Again, it's going to be one, never more than 2 drops per week with updates on the content drops on sizzlefantasy.com. Again, a free exclusive article and any other potential offers that we have going on for that week. Also, and arguably more importantly, go check out Underdog Fantasy. We've got promo code SFS live on Underdog. When you sign up and deposit $10 or more on Underdog Fantasy, you're going to have the chance to play in best ball leagues with me this season. Whether that's, if you want to hop in, the NBA Finals are tonight. We'll see if you actually get to watch this video before that. But if you want to jump into an NBA best ball draft for Game 4, Game 5, whatever the case might be, feel free to do that. Otherwise, we're going to be doing fantasy football drafts, best ball leagues on Underdog this year. SFS Weekly members are going to get the first invite links to those every single week, or Discord members as well. The Discord is in the description of today's video. But also, you're going to have the opportunity to get the draft guide absolutely free. We've got people signing up using promo code SFS, and I just sent out my emails for the day, notifying those who signed up with the code last week that they got the free draft guide and will now be given access to that platform. So, as always, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Promo code SFS on Underdog Fantasy. Get your free draft guide, double your money, and have a whole lot of fun on their platform. Let's get started with today's video, though. Alrighty, guys, one quick note before we get started today is that later on tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll be posting my first ADP battle episode of the season. It's going to be Justin Jefferson versus Jamar Chase, and basically what I'll be doing is assessing and then ultimately determining which of the two players, if they're both on the board and I'm on the clock, I'll be taking for this season. A very in-depth, deep dive into that situation. And then next week, I will be dropping my tight ends tier list. So I've already done running backs and wide receivers. I'll be coming out with more specific ranking style episodes for the receivers next week. We did that for running backs this week, but all stuff to look forward to and stay tuned for here on the SFS channel. So today we've got just 4 tiers for these top 12 players. Again, we're going to be diving into each player's situation as we put them up on the board. What I've been doing typically here through these past tiers list episodes is I've been starting right at the top and making my way down. But who knows? Today I might actually scatter things up a bit on the board. But we're going to start right at the top here today. So you can see the top 12 players right here. We've got, I'll just go left to right, and this is obviously no particular order. This is actually possibly alphabetized. I'm not really sure how that's, you've got Aaron Rodgers, Dak, Jalen Hurts, Joe, Josh, Justin, Kyler. Yep, it is. So first name alphabetized, except for, Tom Brady, TB12 over here. Besides the point, totally irrelevant. It just interested me how that happened there. So I apologize for that little unnecessary tangent there. But Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Russ, Mr. What does he call himself? Mr. Unlimited, and the GOAT TB12 are going to be the topics of today's episode. So one thing I will mention before we dive in is a name missing from today's video who I'm very fond of, have a lot of high expectations for this season, and hope to see him absolutely crush the field this year, is Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is someone that has easily QB1 upside. But for today's video, we're going to keep him on things, but we will definitely be talking some Trey Lance, possibly as early as next week. So for 49ers fans out there, guys who are Trey Lance truthers for fantasy this season, don't worry, I'm thinking about you. I'm not just naively leaving him off this list. I thought long and hard about it, but there's just an element of uncertainty in that San Francisco situation that I'm still looking for some answers with here. But we're going to start at the top here, the S tier. This is going to be guys who I think have easy top 2 potential at the quarterback position. And obviously when you're Josh Allen and you've got back-to-back QB1 seasons in the 2020 and 2021 season, there is no reason not to be drafting him and considering him as a high-end player at this position. And in my opinion, he is the best quarterback in fantasy football. So I will spoil a future numeric rankings list a little bit with that evaluation there. But his ADP right now in Underdog Best Ball Fantasy, remember, promo code SFS gets you the draft guides on sizzlefantasy.com. Absolutely free if you sign up in the month of June here. So if you get on top of things and sign up before the month of June is over, you're going to get access to weekly lineup advice, weekly rankings, in-season analysis, me setting your lineups for you all season long. So extra incentive to go sign up for that right now and not waste any time. But his ADP on Underdog right now is 28.9. He is the first quarterback off the board. And again, you're talking about a near perfect situation. You've got weapons galore from Stephon Diggs to Gabe Davis, who a lot of us are excited about this year. His draft price is getting a little bit rich for my taking here, but nonetheless, he's a very interesting player and a guy who I think has phenomenal upside. You've got Dawson Knox. You've got O.J. Howard coming in as your backup tight end here. You've got a not so much of a productive run game per se outside of Josh Allen, who I'd argue is probably the team's most dangerous rushing threat. But in the the pass catching game out of the backfield, you've got James Cook, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss can do some damage back there as well. Although his touches are probably looking pretty sparse at this point. Nonetheless, I love the Bills situation. Josh Allen's ability to be a rushing threat is insanely attractive. He's got 400 or more rushing yards every season that he's been basically the full-time guy here in Buffalo, and he's played 16 games in the last 3 years. So you're not getting an element of risk with missed games. This is a large, physically imposing body who is durable enough to suit up for the entire season. And what you love to see is Buffalo was a very competitive team last year. They were a Super Bowl contender throughout the season, and Josh Allen was number 4 in passing attempts despite having positive game scripts, despite the fact that the Bills were in control of a lot of football games. Now, they did have some games where they came back and won late. They weren't always trailing, and it's not like they were a perfect scenario here. But the main point is that you're not seeing them front run and run the football a ton. Again, he was still number 4 in passing attempts, number 5 in team passing plays per game, and number 1 in red zone attempts through the air. So you're getting an offense that is efficient. They are scoring points. They are throwing the football. And by getting into the red zone, you're getting those opportunities to not only have passing touchdowns, but when you've got a player like Josh Allen who's able to use his legs and wants to put the ball on the ground like he does, or not necessarily put it on the ground as in a fumble, but tuck it and run. This is a guy who in the red zone has the similar size and frame, not nearly the athleticism of a Cam Newton, but he's a bulldozer, a dump truck, whatever you want to call him. He's running dudes over and scoring rushing touchdowns. So I love the situation here. He's got 36-plus passing touchdowns the last couple seasons here as well. And again, one more time, the back-to-back QB1 in fantasy football. So let's jump down here and talk someone in this B tier. Now, the B tier are guys, obviously these are all QB1s in today's video, who I don't necessarily think have a shot to be the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy, but I do think that they have a strong chance to finish in the 6 to 10 range. These are going to be guys who I think have a very safe floor on a week-to-week basis, and I feel very, very comfortable with having these players in my lineup. So the first guy I'm going to toss into this group is someone who obviously was a breakout last season. Obviously, he finished as a top 5 quarterback, his best fantasy finish at the quarterback position. It's Matthew Stafford of the LA Rams. Now, Stafford had that huge breakout because he had the Triple Crown winner at the wide receiver position on his side a season ago. Matthew Stafford was a very efficient passer. Just talking about him and kind of reminiscing on that Rams season from a year ago, I can just see him airing out the deep ball to Van Jefferson and having him hit him behind the defense for a long 70-yard touchdown bomb. So Matt Stafford obviously brings a tremendous amount of upside to the table in terms of his arm talent, but the reason I don't have him in the A tier, now obviously if you're familiar with tier maker here, S tier is what they call their like elite tier or whatever. A is still very, very good, but not quite the S. B is, we've had specific names for previous episodes, but I figured I'd switch things up and just go with tier maker's set formula for me. If you guys don't like this and want me to go back to more specified tier evaluations and titles, just let me know, and that's something I can easily do for next video. But I figured I'd change things up a little bit for today, and I also mess with the colors, so if you guys hate that, tell me as well. But the reason Matt Stafford doesn't land in the A tier for me is because he does not provide any rushing upside to the table. That's a big deal. The cheat code for fantasy football at the quarterback position is getting dudes who use their legs. And guess what Josh Allen does? That's why he's number one. Not only does he have a rocket arm, a Patrick Mahomes level upside as a passer, those two are very comparable players. And I guess it's kind of a bad comparison because Patrick Mahomes does similar things to Josh Allen with his legs, but they're also very mobile and athletic. So they're able to contribute on the ground. Now, Josh Allen does more, especially in the red zone and using his body as kind of a battering ram than Patrick Mahomes does. But both of them are very capable of adding value in that phase of the game, whereas Matt Stafford is definitely a playmaker, but he does his work a little bit more inside the pocket. Now, why is a player who did manage to finish as a top 5 quarterback a season ago down here in the B tier again? Because even though he doesn't rush at an elite level, he did show us that he can finish in that top 5 group. I think that it's realistic for us to expect some modest, very, very modest and minor reduction in his production output this season. Now, you look at the numbers and you see absolutely phenomenal things. You've got number 3. Matthew Stafford is ranked number 3 overall in 2021 in yards per attempt. So every time he passes the football, he's getting, he's top 3 in that category. He's another guy who was ranked 6th in air yards per attempt. So obviously he is throwing the football downfield. And obviously you see that converted into his yards per attempt. He's cashing in on those opportunities. They're catchable passes that are being, again, brought in, and production is coming from them. That's how you're seeing that air yards turn into actual yards produced here. And he was number 3 in red zone attempts last year because this offense is very, very dynamic. They're very productive. They sustain long drives. They're also able to get freebies over the top and score very quickly. There's a lot of things that you love to see at play in this offense. Now, the one argument I will make in favor of Matthew Stafford here being a guy who could definitely 100% get on the bubble of being a 6th or 7th ranked QB this year and not having that drop off, because again, the efficiency numbers and those yards per attempt, those air yards per attempt are all fantastic, but you would expect some sort of, again, minor regression, is the fact they brought in Allen Robinson. I think they improved their number 2 receiver on this team, and they now have a guy who can work the middle of the field at frankly, I believe, an elite level, especially working against number 2 and 3 tier coverage. And then, I mean, when you think about Cooper Kupp sucking everyone's attention over to his side of the field or wherever he's lined up, whether it be the slot, the end of the line of scrimmage, I mean, they literally put him lined up as a tight end at sometimes last year. Wherever A-Rob lines up, he is automatically a mismatch, and then that still gives you the opportunity for Van Jefferson to stretch the field. They've been praising Tutu Atwell. We'll see if that ever develops into anything. I'm not super high on him. But the point is, you've got weapons here. You've got a run game that can set up the play-action game really well, and he could see very similar levels of success heading into next year. So Matt Stafford doesn't quite have the athletic tools as some other guys, but man, that arm talent, offensive situation, nucleus, coaching staff, everything boils down to having phenomenal opportunity this year. Now, in the A tier, we're going to drop Jalen Hurts in here. This is a guy who I think has an outside shot to finish as the QB1, but he has very real top 3 upside at the quarterback position. I absolutely love what he brings to the table in terms of being a valuable pick in drafts, meaning I don't feel like I'm grossly out or grossly overdrafting him essentially to get him on my team. There's going to be a couple other players in today's video where I don't think they're so hot of a value, and I'm avoiding on draft day at pretty much all costs. And I also feel like he hasn't hit his fantasy ceiling, his peak potential, whatever you want to call it. There is room for growth and improvement that I think he can certainly capitalize on this year. Now, his draft spot on Underdog Fantasy is the 63.7 overall selection. I said that really weird. 63.7 overall is his draft pick. 782 rushing yards in the 2021 season. That is phenomenal. If you're getting a guy over 700 yards, I mean, you're talking about adding 782, that's 78.2 fantasy points of production worth in the run game, not even counting those rushing touchdowns in any red zone production he's able to have. He was 6th in fantasy points per game a season ago, and he just added a difference maker at the wide receiver position that I think can take those passing numbers and elevate them to that next level that we need to go to get Jalen Hurts improved by about 3.5 points or so per game, which would put him in upper echelon tier 1 QB1 overall standards with Josh Allen, who averaged about 24.56 fantasy points per game. That's the exact number there. And Jalen Hurts was just a tad over 21 fantasy points per game. So I see very real potential where that could be the difference. I mean, Hurts only had 16 TD passes a year ago. Cooper Kupp had 16 receiving touchdowns. That's kind of the running joke that I've been picking fun at Jalen Hurts here on the channel. But I absolutely love the guy in fantasy this season. If I can scoop him up in the 6th round of a draft, please sign me up for that. I think that that's a phenomenal value. The upside is great. And again, bringing in a guy like A.J. Brown can increase the efficiency. If he's able to hit some downfield passing attempts, that would be phenomenal. His completion percentage is quite poor, 61.3%, and that ranks below the top 32 players in the National Football League, so not even starting level. But I think that having that extra playmaker can help a little bit. And additionally, the Eagles are just 29th in passing plays per game, so a very rush-heavy offense. But that still plays to his benefit because of his ability to do work with his legs in the run game as well. So, where does that leave us? Let's talk Dak Prescott here and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he's going to fit in similar territory with Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams. Now, for me, I think that I like the situation of a Matthew Stafford better. However, I do think that Dallas is still an offense that is highly potent in the passing game. They can give you a high level of production. However, consistency seems to be a bit of a struggle here because you'll have matchups when Dak Prescott is cut loose and absolutely phenomenal. He'll throw the ball all over the yard, beat up on bad opponents, and then you'll see him really struggle against some more stifling competition, and you'll see his numbers really start to pull back here. But this is a team that, despite the thought around Dallas, is that this is a run-first identity football team. Ever since they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, they've been ground and pound first. That's what we think of, that elite offensive line, which, yes, is getting older and more banged up. They're not nearly as good as they once were. But this team was still number 4 in team passes per game last season. So you're talking about an offense that, despite having a playmaking defense, being able to take the football away, have lots of opportunities on offense, is still throwing the ball a ton. They're not capitalizing on game scripts as much as they should be. They trail late in games where they should not be. And this team also had 102 red zone attempts, so that ranks 7th overall for Dak Prescott in this offense. He also had 7.5 yards per attempt, so a fairly efficient quarterback as well. What does this all mean? He's a very capable player. This is a guy who can, again, effectively distribute the football, make big plays. He's got playmakers. I love having Dalton Schultz in the middle of the field as a safety blanket, and a guy we really saw emerge last year. I think that presence is going to be huge without Amari Cooper this year. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is in for a monster year and is going to finally just gobble up those targets. And then you've got other guys like Michael Gallup coming off of his injury, his ACL. We'll see how effective he's able to be. And Jalen Tolbert might just be a sneaky rookie breakout here if he's able to kind of fulfill that role, if Gallup's able or not able to rather get his legs underneath him. So we know this team is going to try to run the football, but what we've seen the trend be the last couple of years here is the rushing attempts down the stretch of the season fade as this team begins to struggle more and more offensively. And when that's the case, that passing volume for the Cowboys offense goes up and ramps up dramatically. And I think that we could see, again, Dak Prescott have a very, very good year. I don't know if he'll be nearly as efficient as he was last season because, again, the weapons did take a slight decrease because of losing Cedric Wilson and Amari Cooper. But if Tolbert's able to come in and be highly effective, we could see him maintain that level of success. Let's talk another quarterback here. Let's talk Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Also fitting into this B tier, what you're going to see here is these middle 2 tiers are quite plump, if you will, in terms of, you know, the width that we're going to be expanding this board, because the C and S tiers are going to be very, very thin for me today. But TB12 fits into the third, that B tier category here. The explanation behind this is simply how long can Tom Brady continue to sustain this level of production without really adding much on the ground? B, how will the offense change? Will it change with Bruce Arians moving upstairs and obviously having Todd Bowles come in now as the new head coach on the defensive side of the ball? Now Byron Leftwich is still there, so the offense really shouldn't change that much. But the personnel has changed a little bit here. Antonio Brown is no longer in-house. Rob Gronkowski is still on the streets partying it up, deciding if he wants to play football. And you've got Chris Godwin coming off an ACL injury. So what I think that means is Mike Evans is in for one hell of a fantasy season, and Russell Gage should have have some nice work and weeks of production early on in the season. But what does that mean for TB12? He was number 3 in fantasy points per game a season ago. I would expect that to regress slightly this season. But the one encouraging thing here, the thing that you love to see is, hey, this is Tom Brady. So the whole age debacle, and I brought it up, so I brought this upon myself. I'm not going to bet against him. It's not something that I'm really spooked about. It's also something with Travis Kelce where that's like the only valid knock we have is that, he's going to be like 34 this year. So are we going to keep drafting Travis Kelce as a top end tight end 1? The answer is yes. And if the age regression happens, that really sucks. And that stings a little bit. But at the same time, you're going to feel like quite an idiot if you miss out on a potential dominant player at their position. So age is not a reason to not draft Tom Brady. What is, though, is having question marks and relative concern about A, the offensive skill group positions, and B, the team's total passing attempts per game. What I absolutely freaking love to see is that Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers under Bruce Arians last year were number 1 in passing attempts per game with 40.8, despite being a very competitive football team, a team beating up on other NFL organizations and having numerous positive game scripts all season long, which also resulted in them being tied with the Buffalo Bills in number 1 for red zone attempts for Tom Brady, and just having a ridiculous amount of volume in that passing game. I think that they were trying to get him the MVP at his age 44 season. It didn't end up working out, but he had one heck of a season, one heck of a year. I think that he's definitely still in the QB1 mix. I've seen some conversation, some talk from other fantasy football outlets talking about potentially no longer having him in their top 10, but I've still got him in the B tier here because I think that the situation and the continued high volume in the passing game, especially when you talk about a guy like Ronald Jones, who really didn't see too much work last year, leaving the offensive situation, but you've got other guys like a Leonard Fournette and a Rachaad White who are certainly capable of taking rushing work, but I don't really know where I was going with that, to be honest, besides the fact that Tom Brady is probably going to continue to throw a lot of passes this season. He does have a strong supportive running game, which is where I was eventually heading there, and those guys are both capable of catching passes, which again is very favorable for all parties. So TB12 for me is still in that top 10 QB bubble here, and until we see otherwise, I have no problem leaving him here because the offense has shown us they are perfectly fine with continuing to air it out at a league high rate despite having a very, very veteran quarterback. We're going to dabble back in the A tier here. I'm going to throw Lamar Jackson up there next to Jalen Hurts. So Lamar is someone that I think I actually just got into quite a silly argument with somebody on an Instagram reel I posted about Rashad Bateman being a breakout player this season. And their argument essentially was that Rashad can't break out because the Ravens don't throw the football. But then I referenced the fact that they were number 7 in team passing plays per game last season. Whatever, and then it turned into this whole debacle where I guess Lamar Jackson is injury prone. But if you've listened to the channel here, if you've listened to some evaluation of Lamar last season, the 4 games he missed were completely freak accident, fluky. He was rolled up on a routine rollout passing play and was pressured, and that's how the injury happened. It wasn't like he was a running quarterback power up the gut 7 plays in a row and ended up, snapping his ankle because he was having D lineman land on top of him. No, he's a smart player. He's athletic as heck, and he's not going to run the ball straight up the middle. They're going to get him on the perimeter of the offense and running out in space. But that's besides the point. Lamar's rushing upside gives him so much capability as a fantasy weapon because of how many points in efficiency or how much efficiency you can rack up on the ground as opposed to through the air, because obviously when you're running for 10 yards and getting a point versus throwing for 25 and getting 1 point, you're going to want to run the ball because you're getting that point over twice as quick. So yes, Lamar did have his first injury last season where he did miss just about a quarter of the season. However, I don't expect this to be a concerning trend for the team. As I referenced, he was number 7, or the team was number 7 in passing plays per game last year. And I think that Lamar Jackson in his time last year where he was healthy really showed us exactly how far he's come as a passer. No, he is not a groundbreaking passer in terms of being a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes level thrower of the football, but this is a guy who showed the ability to step up in the pocket, make big throws downfield. Hollywood Brown dropped more than a handful of them last season. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but he did let multiple touchdowns slide through his fingertips in one game against the Detroit Lions, where he could have totally changed the outcome of that game. Well, the Ravens did end up winning that with a 68-yard field goal to walk off, but they could have made things a lot less stressful for themselves. And then you've also got a situation where I think Lamar, between Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, maybe Devin Duvernay can break out this year. He's got pass catchers despite the fact that this team does want to use him as a rushing threat. So when you talk about having 133 carries and only playing 12 games and still ranking number 2 at the quarterback position for rushing attempts per game and total rushing attempts, that's phenomenal. You've got 16 red zone carries, 767 rush yards, so nearly as many as Jalen Hurts had in 15 games. And then the fact that he was a 63.9 rushing yards per contest. So you're getting, on top of the passing production, on top of the rushing touchdown volume, you're getting basically 6.39 fantasy points per game on the ground that most other players are not racking up. So that's where you start to find that difference. That's where you start to find that advantage and that edge at the QB position. And another guy who brings that to the table is Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler also fits in the A tier here. What you're noticing is mobility is king at the quarterback position. All 4 of the top 4 guys on the tiers list right now all have a dynamic ability to use their legs. What do you see in the tier B? Guys who aren't necessarily quite as athletic in that category. So Kyler now has 3 straight 400-yard rushing seasons, not nearly as much production as those other 2 players. Now Kyler has had a 700-yard rushing year, but that wasn't this past season. He only had, in 14 games, 423 yards rushing this season, which was his lowest output yet to this point in his career. But he's got back-to-back top 4 quarterback finishes in fantasy. So, and this past season, a really interesting stat from playerprofiler.com, which has a lot of great statistical analysis. He was number 1 in a stat they call money throws, which essentially is clutch, athletic, difficult throws. It's literally a broad category, but a situation where you are, again, either needing to be clutch, make an unbalanced throw, make some sort of unorthodox move to complete a pass. Kyler Murray was number 1 in creating plays of that nature. So obviously you've got a dude who can deliver the football. I love the air raid system that they run there in Arizona. And not only is this not a team that needs to air the football out a ton, they're able to be very balanced as well and use the run game to their advantage to set up a really effective passing game. And in doing so, it creates a cyclical process where this team just has a lot of offensive opportunity and upside week in and week out. They're only number 9 in team passing plays per game, which is still very good to be in the top 10 of the National Football League. But with that, there's a lot of rushing value there as well. And again, that's how that offense stays very balanced. Kyler Murray is also able to do damage on the ground in the red zone. He's a very prolific rusher there. And he was number 8 in deep ball attempts last year. So that's something I think could actually increase this year once he gets D-Hop back down the stretch after the first 6-game suspension. Hollywood Brown will certainly add to the deep ball production. And then you've still got guys like A.J. Green and Rondale Moore, who I think can actually contribute in that area as well. So I really like Kyler. I don't necessarily feel as comfortable with him as I do Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson. He has gotten nicked up and dinged a little bit, which has hurt his production down the stretch of both the last 2 fantasy seasons. So something to keep your eye on and be marginally concerned about there. But at the end of the day, this is still a top 5 to 6 fantasy quarterback and someone you can count on to be kind of that tier 2 level player. Probably not going to finish as a QB1. Definitely has a chance though. Again, these A tier guys are guys who have an outside chance to finish at that number 1 overall spot, but probably at the end of the day, don't quite have enough to hit that metric. But obviously, someone from this group will finish in the top 3 because the top 12 has where was I going with that? They will finish in the top. One of the players, all right, let's rephrase this entirely. One of the players from the A tier will finish top 3 unless none of them make it there, and my rankings are totally wrong. because we've only got 2 players in the S tier today. So there will be one name that moves himself up into that top 3 category. So looking at the rest of the names here, we've got Herbert, we've got Burrow, we've got Mahomes, Wilson, and Rodgers. Who do we want to put up on the board next? I'm going to go Russell Wilson. I'm going to put him in the B tier here. Now, I think that if you asked me last season, I probably would have put Russell in the A tier. And yes, I think Russell's walking into a much more favorable fantasy football situation. But the reason I don't quite have him in that A tier is because I think that this team's going to have a lot of positive game scripts. And based on the infrastructure and the previous identity of the Denver Broncos, I think they're going to want to have a very balanced offense and run the football. So instead of being one of these teams that's top 10 in passing plays per game, I expect Denver to probably be in the middle of the pack, somewhere in the 16 to 18 range. Not that that's a bad thing. I think Russ will be incredibly efficient. I think that he'll be someone who does a phenomenal job in that system between Jerry Jeudy, Alberto, Cortland Sutton, and the running backs. I think they're going to have a very prolific offense, and Russ was number 5 in yards per attempt at 7.8 yards per attempt last season. So again, he was super efficient with the Seahawks in those games where he wasn't injured with that mallet finger, but he was only 13th in points per game a season ago. Obviously, a lot of this goes back to, again, well, you're talking about points per game, so this isn't going to factor the missed time due to that injury. But I think the reason the number wasn't nearly as high is A, his hand and throwing motion was not the same after that injury, and B, the Seahawks were such a dysfunctional situation and organization that it just became really, really hard to be effective down the stretch last year. But they were also the number 32, so ranked dead last in passing plays per game, so it's not like Russ was getting elite levels of opportunity and volume to throw the football in that offense. So I think, though, between Melvin and Javonte, they're going to be a team pretty close to a 55-45, 52-48 type offense. Again, I think they'll be doing a lot of things very well. I think he could get into some shootouts in division this year. And I think Russ still has a super high fantasy ceiling, but I'm not so confident he'll finish in that top 6 range, which is the S and A tiers for today's video. Now, I will tell you, I'm basically going to put Patrick Mahomes in here in the A tier as like a fringe guy who barely makes the group. The reason he makes the group is because he's Patrick Mahomes, has the talent of a Josh Allen, who is the top quarterback for me in this year's fantasy football. However, the weapons, the situation, the offense of Kansas City will be different. He was number 5 in points per game last season. I don't expect him to follow up and have nearly as good of a year now. With that being said, he's ranked right on the fringe of my top 5 in my actual numeric rankings. Again, we'll dive into that in a future episode and talk through a little bit why I like some players more than others. Maybe through just listening to my analysis, you can get a decent idea of that. If you want the rankings, check them out on sizzlefantasy.com. Remember, promo code Underdog or on Underdog, promo code SFS, get you that draft guide for free. But at the end of the day here, Patrick Mahomes no longer has Tyreek Hill, and that is a big deal. We can't overlook that. Again, he was 5th in points per game in 2021. His best ball ADP is too high right now. 39.6 overall is just too much of an investment for me to really get behind here. And when you're talking about being 2nd in passes per game, having 4,839 yards, so nearly the 5K marker, I don't like it. Tyreek Hill brought such a explosiveness level and an opportunity to make humongous plays over the top of the offense that I just don't know how you sustain that or how you really bring that back to fruition here in the 2022 season. So Mahomes also, I thought this was really interesting, was 5th in danger plays last year, which was 40 overall. Danger plays were essentially unnecessary risk taken that could result in a turnover. So by 5th, that means like 5th worst, as in he had the 5th highest amount of danger plays last year, and he had 28 interceptable passes a season ago as well, which is also very interesting. However, despite all of this, he was number 1 in accuracy rating. So, phenomenal quarterback, totally elite talent here. Andy Reid offense, fantastic. They did bring in Juju and MVS, who apparently has a very strong connection with that camp. And Sky Moore, you bring back Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce. There are pieces there, but if you're talking about needing Sky Moore, MVS, and Juju to make up Tyreek Hill through 3 players, I'm really sorry, but I just don't think he can quite be the same guy we've seen him be. And even so, last year we faded Patrick Mahomes as well, and I think that, for a guy who was being drafted as the QB1, QB 5 finish is fine, it's decent, but you weren't thrilled with it. You didn't get the value back on the draft position, so why would we try doing it again this year when he loses his top option? Back-to-back State Farm guys here. Aaron Rodgers, we're just going to, spoil this part here, but the lone wolf in the C category for me is the guy hanging on by an absolute COVID toenail, if you will. If you remember that Aaron Rodgers joke where he literally put his little piggies up on the Zoom camera for the media to see. But Aaron Rodgers is the guy, again, just barely hanging on by that COVID toe. Trey Lance is like trying to pull him down and get him out of there. But it's really neck and neck between these two for me. The same situation here with Aaron Rodgers is why he's a C-tier quarterback versus a B-tier quarterback, just like Patrick Mahomes being an A-tier quarterback versus an S-tier quarterback. Losing Devontae Adams, 169 targets, a guy with 30% of the target share in your offense, it's too much. It's too much to overcome. And unlike Kansas City that brought in Juju, MVS from Aaron Rodgers, and Sky Moore in the draft, they did Christian Watson and Sammy Watkins. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of the group here. I really like Christian Watson. I'm a Packer fan, by the way, so I'm being quite harsh on Aaron Rodgers. And again, I stay very objective in these fantasy episodes, but I think that Aaron Rodgers at best is a low-end QB1 and a high-end quarterback 2, if you ask me. I just think that it's going to be really hard to ask Christian Watson to be a 25% target share player, which he definitely has the opportunity to be, and I hope he cashes in on it, and I hope that he erupts onto the fantasy scene as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty from the rookie class of 2022. But there's a reason he went in the second round, unlike the other, 5 or 6 guys, your Traylon Burks, your Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, and Jahan Dotson. There's the 6 right there. So I just think Aaron's got his work cut out for him. You're talking about having Robert Tonyan, Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, Amari Rodgers, Randall Cobb. And the run game, of course, and Dillon and Jones can both catch passes, but I just see a cap on the upside here. Aaron Rodgers is running out of the pocket and scrambling less and less as his career progresses here. So I'm just going to be a little bit hesitant and a little bit cautious in my evaluation of him because I think that there's a very strong chance that he either, again, is a lower QB1 or doesn't even make the QB1 list and becomes a high overall QB2. So what do we want to do here? We've got Joe Burrow. We've got Justin Herbert. 2 fantastic players for this upcoming NFL season here. We're going to toss Justin Herbert into the S tier. Now, he is alongside Josh Allen. He is above Patrick Mahomes, as well as Lamar Jackson. And the reasoning for this, why I feel so comfortable and confident with this, is because what we've seen the last 2 seasons collectively, what we've seen from the Chargers offense, and overall, I think that the situation and the infrastructure surrounding him is better than some of these other players at this point in time. Herbert's ADP on Underdog is 44.4 overall, and he's thrown 30 or more touchdown passes in back-to-back seasons. I could easily see that number increasing, and the fact that he has yet to go over 40 TDs, yet he finished 7th in points per game in his rookie year, and then 2nd in points per game this past year. There's a whole lot of upside here. Herbert will run the ball every once in a while, not nearly as much as an Allen or Mahomes, not nearly as physical as an Allen, and he's a little bit more awkward in space than Mahomes. But what I love to see here is you have such a good combination of skill sets surrounding you. You've got a perfect receiving back in Austin Eckler, a beautiful safety blanket in Keenan Allen, a dominant deep threat 50-50 jump ball winner in Mike Williams, and you've got other guys like Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, and then you throw in Gerald Everett into the mix here, who I think can all contribute in niche roles for this team going forward. Herbert's Chargers in 2021 were 6th in team passing plays per game. This is a team that saw a really good jump in offensive production since he's come under center here and transitioned away from Phillip Rivers. And what I thought was just beautiful was that Justin Herbert ranked 4th in protection last season with 88.6% of his dropbacks being blocked effectively. So you're talking about a guy who was getting killed in his rookie season, now having a phenomenal offensive line to play behind. You've also got a guy who is number 5 in red zone attempts and number 9 in deep ball attempts. So you're getting those shots downfield. You're getting the talent that he's throwing the football to, and you're also getting the poise, the opportunity, and the overall domination factor that Justin Herbert brings the potential to the table. So I think he is definitely solidified as a top 2 quarterback for this season. If you want to argue Patrick Mahomes over Justin Herbert with me, we can go on all day about that because I think that it's very clear and obvious that Justin Herbert is a phenomenal arm talent with better playmakers surrounding him in that Chargers offense. And I just think that it's a situation that is really, really good here. And I think he can continue to get better here in year 3, where he was already the number 2 points per game scorer in 2021. 2022, I think, has very, very bright potential for him moving into this next year. Now, Joe Burrow is going to be someone that I have also just barely clinging on to this A tier here. This is going to be the player that in the draft you can most likely get as the latest of any of these picks on this tier. Now, he doesn't have the rushing of any of these 4 players, but what he does have is very, very good weapons, and this is arguably one of the best up-and-coming passers in the National Football League. There is some absolutely nasty stats that I'm going to bring up in the Ja'Marr Chase versus Justin Jefferson ADP battle video that I've compiled. This dude, in terms of big time throws, under pressure attempts, I mean, Joe Burrow is absolutely just the guy for Cincinnati. He is pretty much this. I don't want to give all the credit to him for getting to the Super Bowl, but the things that he was able to do behind the number 32nd ranked offensive line, his pass protection percentage was dead last in the NFL last year. That same thing we just referenced with Justin Herbert, and the ability to have number 1 deep ball accuracy in the NFL, it's insane stuff. And when you've got Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins catching passes, Tyler Boyd is your number 3. The Bengals offense is just such a phenomenal thing that you want to associate yourself with in fantasy football. He's got a run game, a workhorse back in Joe Mixon, and this team was literally 16th in passing attempts per game a season ago. So you've got a guy who is in the middle of the pack in terms of passing attempts, is ridiculously efficient and accurate throwing the ball downfield, has probably the best wide receiver trio in the National Football League, and has a very reliable run game. Plus his O-line got a whole lot better this year. So I think that the one thing that would hold Joe back would be the rushing, the lack of athleticism and ability to produce in that category. But I think he has more opportunity and upside as a passer than Matt Stafford did, and that passing at an elite level got him to the QB5 spot last year. So those are my top 12 quarterback tiers for 2022 at this point in time. It is early June here for this season, so probably going to update this list at least once more throughout the offseason. But as always, drop down, click that subscribe button, turn the bell on, and never miss an episode here on the channel. Also, if you guys enjoyed, check out SFS Weekly. I'll be posting my top 10 secrets to dominate your 2022 fantasy football leagues, and I'll be dropping that on Sunday sometime. Again, 1 to 2 drops of exclusive content per week with SFS Weekly. Additionally, go check out Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SFS gets you the draft guide. What is it? For free on sizzlefantasy.com. Again, today I just set up the guys that signed up, or ladies as well, if you want to take part. And if you're watching today's video, heck yeah, I love that you're on the channel here. And you get that draft guide for free. I just notified the people that signed up last week that they got their free draft guide and helped them get all set up with that. So check that stuff out, you guys. I will see you hopefully later tonight in another episode, or just go check out another video on the channel here. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.